welcome back to the show today. Today we are talking about players that lost their edge, or ones that went extinct because they refused to adapt and change their play style. So let's get started with our first player who is refusing to evolve. That is Ben Simmons. 2 years ago, Ben Simmons was one of the best players in the league. He made third team All-NBA. That means he was the third best point guard in the league. Now Ben Simmons is coming off the bench on the Brooklyn Nets, and he's borderline unplayable in the Brooklyn Nets system. So what happened to Ben Simmons? Did he get worse, or did he suffer a career-altering injury? No, neither, but kind of both. We're just seeing a player that was thriving in a system built around him, refusing to adapt to a new system on a different team that is not built around him. Ben Simmons worked in Philadelphia. He's incredibly athletic, he can guard all 5 positions, he's great in transition, and he's 6'10", a 6'10" point guard. But he can't shoot. And more importantly, he doesn't have the confidence to start learning how to shoot. This wasn't a problem when he was in Philly. He was playing with George Niang, JJ Redick, Shake Milton, all guys that are fine shooting and have pretty decent three-point percentages. And Joel Embiid, he's a center and he still doesn't mind shooting a three-point shot, and his percentage is pretty good. But on this new Brooklyn Nets team, his liabilities are completely exposed. Coach Jacques Vaughn says, if I put another big out there, I have to figure out the spacing. Simmons can't move to the perimeter because no one's gonna bother to guard him. The lane is gonna be just as congested. He says, if I put another playmaker out there, I have to worry about what Ben Simmons is gonna do without the ball. Ben Simmons isn't gonna move to get open. He doesn't want to be open. He doesn't want the ball because he doesn't want to shoot. Vaughn says, I can't play small ball because then who's gonna rebound? Ben Simmons is tall, but he's not a particularly great rebounder. All of this stems from Ben Simmons' insecurity about his shooting, which seems to be getting worse by the game. I think he has an image that he thinks he has to uphold of being cool and sexy. He doesn't want a compilation of him bricking shots to be circulating the internet, which there will be one if he starts shooting. Until he conquers his fear of failure, he's going to be relegated to a role player, or even just being on the bench or potentially out of the league. Let's compare Ben Simmons to another point guard in the league who has not only stayed relevant but was an All-NBA player at 37 years old, Chris Paul. A lot of people thought Chris Paul had lost his edge his last year in Houston. James Harden had even said, you can't even beat your man, criticizing his ability to create his own shot. Now in Phoenix, Chris Paul has learned to be a spot-up shooter, something he hasn't been in the past. Teams would pick him up from half court and exhaust him, so he's had to give the ball to Booker or Bridges to give him a little bit of a break because he's old and he's tired. But in return, he had to work on that catch-and-shoot three-pointer, which he did, and he's pretty decent at him. Chris Paul is generally taking a smaller role in the offense every year. His points per game are decreasing, but his assists remain the same. He's had to utilize more of his basketball IQ in being a floor general on defense and a visionary on offense. And now this season, Chris Paul probably won't be an All-NBA player, but he doesn't have to be. He can set up Kevin Durant, he can set up Devin Booker to make great shots and just play his role and hopefully get a championship. I think this is what makes an all-time great, someone that's willing to see where they fit into a system and execute upon that regardless of how large the role is. So good for you, Chris Paul. Now let's talk about the classic example of extinction, the back-to-the-basket centers, the classic traditional centers of the NBA. So for centers, the role hasn't changed that much on defense. You're still protecting the rim, keeping players from scoring easy layups. But in the early teens, players like Pau Gasol and Tim Duncan started playing facing the hoop and less back them down buckets because they weren't efficient. Gradually, even the centers started shooting three-point shots like Al Horford, Serge Ibaka, and LaMarcus Aldridge. The beginning of the end of the classic center was in the 2009 NBA Finals, where the Lakers defeated one of the best classic centers of all time, Dwight Howard. Granted, the Lakers did have a classic center of their own in Andrew Bynum. Most of their points were scored by Pau Gasol and Kobe Bryant in the pick and roll. Andrew Bynum only averaged 6.3 points a game. Now let's cut to 2019 with Brook Lopez. Brook came into the league as a traditional center. His first 6 seasons in the league, he only shot 7 three-pointers and he made none of them. But in 2019, he made 187 three-pointers. For reference, that's more than Paul Pierce ever made in a single season in his career. And he shot 37% on those three-point attempts. Brook Lopez has always been a great rim protector and a pretty serviceable wing defender. But adding that three-point shot to his game made him one of the best centers in the NBA at 34 years old. Now, let's talk about one-trick ponies who didn't adapt, but they doubled down on their skill set. We're talking about Kyle Korver, who I think is one of the most successful one-trick ponies in NBA history. Kyle Korver has one of the greatest three-point percentages of any player in NBA history. He was so good at shooting three-pointers, he was a 2015 All-Star, even though he was only averaging 12 points a game. He even has the record for the best three-point percentage in a single season. Korver played 16 seasons in the NBA because his skill set never deteriorated, it only got better. He just wrapped around screens and shot catch and shoot three-pointers. Smart move by Korver, be the best at one particular thing. He had a long career and he made a lot of money. Now let's talk about one of the biggest metamorphoses of all time, the biggest transition in style of play, Chris Bosh. Chris Bosh's last season in Toronto, he was averaging 24 points a game and 11 rebounds. Then when he was in Miami, he was averaging only 18 points and 7 rebounds. Playing with LeBron and Dwayne Wade limited his offensive possessions. When Bosh was in Toronto, most of the offense ran around him catching the ball in the low post with his back to the basket, backing a guy down and getting his points that way. Bosh had to learn how to catch the ball facing his opponent, create space for himself, and pull up for a jumper. Not only did Bosh's willingness to take a different and smaller role help LeBron and Dwayne Wade, it made him a more versatile player when Dwayne Wade and LeBron were sitting out. When LeBron and Dwayne Wade were sitting out, Bosh had a 75% win percentage and he averaged 30 points a game. He was still good and the Heat were still good even when their best players were sitting out. Bosh didn't let his ego get in the way of him being on a good team. He was able to fit into a system and achieve a greater goal. Bosh got 2 championships and he earned a lot of money. Good for Chris Bosh. He also seems like a really cool guy. I like Chris Bosh a lot. Alright, well that's how you adapt in the NBA or whatever the heck I was talking about. I don't really remember. But those are, you gotta change your styles, and I think this is a metaphor for everyone in their own life. What you do as a human is you survive, you adapt, you evolve. That's what you have to do. So do not complain about your situation. Just learn how to adapt. Get good at something. Don't complain that things are changing. Yeah, thanks for being here. Eat a corn dog. Much love.